In this segment, we will build an understanding of what trauma is and increase awareness of how trauma can manifest in behaviors at school. Building this awareness allows us to broaden our menu of options for responding to those behaviors and choose responses that are more inclusive and create a feeling of safety for students dealing with trauma in the classroom. We will also learn how TLS can help mitigate the effects of trauma and build skills in self-regulation and resilience. Let's start with a few definitions of trauma from experts in the field. The Diagnostical and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, DSM-5, defines trauma as exposure to actual or threatened death, serious injury, or sexual violation. It clusters symptoms into 4 categories: re-experiencing the traumatic event, heightened arousal, for example, a state of anxiety, paranoia, or being on edge or reactive, avoidance of people or things they may have enjoyed before, and negative thoughts and feelings. Another trauma expert, Peter Levine, says that trauma is not what happens to us, but what we hold inside. As a result, the body tries to adapt to the traumatic energy that is trapped inside, which can cause dysregulation and damage. The maladaptations to traumatic energy can affect all body systems: digestion, immune response, sleeping patterns, the cardiovascular system, and of course, the nervous system. All are affected by trauma. Levine also says that the body keeps replaying the trauma in attempts to renegotiate it. This replaying of the trauma can often manifest in harmful behaviors or patterns of interaction with others. But if given the proper guidance and environment, the body can succeed in finding a healthy equilibrium again. Yet another expert, Bessel van der Kolk, has done extensive research on trauma. He says that trauma is an inability to be present in the body. The part of the brain that is responsible for feeling bodily sensations, the insula, is disrupted by trauma, which can lead to a disconnection from a sense of self, pleasure, and feeling. Van der Kolk says that trauma is seen as a disease of the past, but the problem is right now. The person cannot be present. Let's look at the brain in its evolutionary layers. The most basic, the brainstem, carries out our basic survival functions like heartbeat, breathing, sleep, and eating. Then comes the midbrain, still pretty basic for survival. It governs things like motor function, sight, and hearing. Next, we have the limbic system, often referred to as the mammalian brain, which allows us to experience emotions. And lastly, the cortex, or executive function, which is what makes us human. It allows for attention, memory, decision-making, self-control, and language. During childhood, the cortex is still developing. Over time, it becomes more capable of modulating the lower parts of the brain. We become more capable of managing our emotions and impulses. What happens if this development process is disrupted by something like abuse, abandonment, or witnessing violence in the family? Traumatic events in early childhood interrupt cortical development, meaning that the child is more likely to have challenges regulating her or himself. Childhood trauma can affect a wide range of functions, including organizational skills, emotional regulation, relationships with peers and adults, processing social cues and conveying feelings appropriately, establishing a coherent sense of self. The internal map of self and the world, meaning the way they see themselves, others, the world in general, including what they are capable of and what is safe and unsafe. Language skills, attention control, learning and memorization, impulse control, and understanding cause and effect relationships. These are in addition to physical problems that often develop as a result of trauma, like digestive problems, chronic pain, and dysregulated eating and sleeping patterns. Take a moment to look at your responses to the question about how trauma manifests itself among your students. Do any of your responses appear in this list? From your own experience and observations, do you have anything you would add to this list? Now that we have a better idea of how trauma affects kids, what can we as teachers do to help mitigate the effects of trauma, build self-regulation skills, and promote healing? Research tells us that in order to do this, you need to integrate the levels of the brain: the kinesthetic, the emotional, and the cognitive. Transformative life skills strengthen the parts of the brain that are responsible for self-awareness and integrate the different parts of the brain so that we can use this self-awareness to regulate our emotions and behaviors. Through the action part of the ABCs, we reawaken the insula, allowing ourselves to reconnect with sensation and re-inhabit the body. We also allow stress held in muscles and connective tissues to release, which can bring about tremendous relief. We use the breath to calm our nervous system as we do this, so that even as we encounter the traumatic tension trapped in the body, we develop skills for coping and resilience. Through the centering or concentration, we develop greater self-awareness and increase the size and activity of the medial prefrontal cortex, which allows us to regulate our emotions and behaviors. By combining the action, breathing, and centering in a mindful way, we integrate the levels of the brain and build self-regulation and resilience. Being aware of the possibility that students may be suffering from trauma can help us to widen the array of responses that we can choose from to address challenges in the classroom. Weaving integrative practices like TLS into the school day can give students an opportunity to build the basic skills that they need in order to engage in learning. When undertaken together, these practices and this awareness can help create an emotionally safe space where children have the chance to release stress and heal.